Hello and welcome back to Lemaster Tech, and in today's video I'm going to walk you through animations in the SCADA software called Ignition. We're going to cover several types of animations you can do, including Boolean, color, and visibility transforms, text transforms including color, text strings, and integers, and then enumeration as well, where you can take integer values and do text-based transforms with it. So this is many of the most common types of animations you'd need to do in Ignition, and then more importantly, it'll show you how tag bindings and animations work so that you can go and build whatever sorts of animations you need into your projects. Alright, so we are going to try to cover a lot of content in this video, so let's dive right into it. To start, let's go ahead and make a new tag called a memory tag because I don't have a PLC hooked up right now. I'm doing that just to show you that this doesn't really matter what platform you're using. As soon as you get a tag to Ignition, they're all kind of the same. So I'm just going to make a Boolean tag and call it color bool to start. All right. Now I'm going to go to the perspective components window and I'm going to grab an icon. This is just something Ignition includes. They have a number of icons that you can kind of select and play around with. And actually, I'm going to make two. One to act sort of as a button for us. So I'm going to go to the path and I'm going to type in button. And I'm just going to grab this one that looks like a button. And then the second one is what we're actually going to animate. Okay. So I'm going to write a very basic script here with you that is going to... I'm going to go to the icon that's our button. I'm going to go to configure events, mouse events, on click, plus add a script. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the tag, system.tag.read blocking, and then I'm going to read the value of that tag, dot value, there we go. And then if my value is high, I'm going to basically write to that tag, so system.tag.write blocking, there we go. And then the same tag path, Control C. And what we're checking here is if it's high, we want to write false, and then else would be it's low. So in that case, we will write true. All right. And honestly, that tag path had to be typed out 3 times. Should probably put that in a variable, but we're not here to optimize my scripting abilities. We're here to make sure that this tag works for toggling. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly just go into this run mode, and I can see that it's toggling in the lower window. All right, now let's talk about the actual animation that is the subject of the video. I'm going to copy that tag path preemptively because I know we want it, and I'm going to go to the perspective property editor window. By default, it's usually tabbed in the right when you open up the designer, but if you go to views and panels and toolbars, you have a lot of configurability over that, and you just need the perspective property editor toolbar active, okay? So in props, you can see color is already there, but if it wasn't there, you're always able to add a property, and then you can add in color if you need to. In this case, it won't let me because it would be a duplicate, but you should have color already if you're using the icons. And then for binding type, we're going to go to tag. We're going to paste in that color Boolean. And now if we were to do just this right now, it's going to give us an error because it can't convert true and false to a different color. So what we need to do is hit this add transform button, and we're going to do a map. And it should open up this window for you, and we're just going to hit 2 pluses. The input type is going to be a value, and specifically it's going to either read true or false. And you can see in the bottom, it's also telling you what the tag is currently reading, which is nice. And then the output type we want, you can see they have a number of options, but value and color are by far the 2 most common ones. And so when it's true, let's go ahead and make it green. And when it's false, let's make it red. And then fallback would be like, hey, we're having error. Like this is a Boolean tag and we don't have true or false. So fallback will make this yellow just in case there's an error. Okay, and as soon as I hit apply, you can see that it goes green. Now if I hit run and I click this button, you can see it turns red. So the button is changing color bool between 0 and 1, but then the animation on the tag is reading that back and determining which color it should go to. All right, so color is one of the most common animations you're going to want to do if you're in a factory setting or in a home setting. It's a really easy way to quickly tell you the status of something as either okay or not okay. So let's go ahead and delete color and take a look at what I think is kind of the next most common one, which would be, let's take that same tag, color Boolean, and we already have a button set up for it, and let's take a look at doing a visibility animation. So I'm going to use the same tag, which is color bool, copy path. I'm going to use the same tag, but what's nice is because visibility is a true or false, you don't actually need any expression or any transform here if you want it to change true and false with the tag. So if I go into run mode and I toggle the bit, you can see that second smiley face appearing and disappearing on the Boolean. Again, I know I went through that one pretty quick, but down in meta, there's this visible option. You can toggle it true or false just from the designer, but if you want it to be tied to a tag, you do it just like this. Now, I know in the beginning I had like a sun and a moon toggling back and forth, so it also kind of makes it look like it's doing a transform if you have two icons and that their visibility toggles inversely of each other. So let's do that pretty quick. I don't want to spend too much of the tutorial looking for the moon icon, but I found it quick last time. Typing in moon didn't work, so yeah, there we go. There's one. So if I have these copies and I have them both set to visible, then you do need a transform to get you the opposite. And the easiest one is just add a script transform and return not value. That way the output is going to be the opposite of whatever Boolean you're reading. So if I hit apply now and I save and I enter runtime, you can see my sun and my moon are toggling as the color here toggles. So that's a basic animation for visibility and for color based on a Boolean tag. Now let's go ahead and take a look at two cool things, which is dynamically changing color and text based on a non-Boolean condition. So an integer or a float, heck, a string if you really wanted to, but I don't. So memory tag, I'm gonna call this one color integer, and then I'll start it out as a 0 and it'll be a memory tag. Now I'm gonna go back to perspective components and I'm gonna grab a label for this one. I'm gonna just drop in a label here in the middle, and so that it's a little easier to see on the tutorial. Oh, come on. That was weird. Okay, so it's a little easier to see on the tutorial. I am going to just preemptively make the font size pretty big, and then we're actually going to mess with the font size in a second, but I'll make it, what's big, 32? Yeah, we'll start there. Okay, so it is basically just what we already saw at a very basic point. If I copy the path of my integer and I go to text now, the text property of a label, and I go to tag for binding, and then I just drop in the color integer, then I hit OK. It is that value. And if I go into this value and I write it to a 10 instead, it immediately changes to a 10. So that is actually a basic style of animation. It's animating the text, but all you're really doing is, changing the text on a label. You probably found that one out with just forums. So let's look at something a little more interesting, which would be like the color of the text changing with that value as well, right? So let's say we have the label and the color, and I don't know, we'll make it red initially. If we go into the same spot before that we had that color animation and tag, and we drop in the same tag, and we add a transform, and we go to map, now what's going to be kind of annoying is if you go in here and you do value, and you just add a bunch and you make your output color. What's annoying is if you just do mapping value to color, then you would have to go integer by integer or value by value that integer could be, and you have to choose what color you want it to be. So what's easier is this numeric range option where we say, okay, between 0 and 50, the level is good, let's say. So level is going to be green. Between 50 and 75, let's say we're talking about percentages on a tank. It's getting too high, so we maybe want to make it yellow. And then between 75 and 100, we are at high level, so we're gonna make it red to warn people. And then the fallback will be like, fallback will be black to basically say like, hey, we're getting unexpected values here. Okay, so with this numeric range to color mapping, I'm gonna hit OK, and what you can see is it's green right now because we're at that 0 to 50 range. If I go to 60, it turns yellow, which is actually not super easy to see because the background color is white. I spelled background wrong. Background color is white, but if we make it a dark gray, I think all of these colors will show up. So 10, it's green, it's healthy. Yellow, it's you know, hey, you're getting up there. And then 80, there's red. And let's say this went to 105, it turns black because the value is out of range. So that's kind of a cool way to take a look at doing dynamic animation. So I'm going to go back. I had pre-written a gateway script that was going to take that color integer and just keep sending it up until it hits 100 so that we can do some testing, and I don't have to like manually go in and toggle come on, Pete, talking right at the same time. So I don't have to manually go in and toggle that value. I can just automate it away, but that only works if you keep consistent naming standards. So I called it color tag before. All right, so with that script, you can now see every 100 milliseconds I have the gateway going through and adding one to that value. It's just so that we can kind of see our animation working and I don't have to keep typing in a value. Okay, and just before we get to the last section, I think now is a great time to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. PCBWay is an incredibly cool company that manufactures printed circuit boards and printed circuit board assemblies for hobbyists and makers. On top of that, they have high quality 3D printing and metal prototyping services. They have super helpful and friendly staff, including an engineering team that reviews every order before sending it to production. Fair pricing and great turnaround times. So thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring the video. Be sure to check them out in the link in the description below. Now back to the tutorial. The next thing I want to do is show, let's say you also wanted to animate something else. Now we have two animations based on the same tag already. So if I wanted to go in and also have the font size change based on the same tag, that's a pretty enormous changing value and it starts pretty small. So let's also add a transform and a little script here to say let's just return the value divided by 2 plus 10. So it'll change a little bit slower like this. Now, what I wanted to show you is you can animate multiple properties by using a custom property that you pass in once. So obviously we now have 3 animations based on this one color integer tag. If I were to go into custom and add a tag property and put in the mapping of that tag, this gets way easier because I can come into each of these spots, and rather than this being directly linked to a tag, you can go to indirect tag binding and you can give it the property of this thing and then custom parameters, and then we called the tag this custom tag. So you can go and do this for all 3, and you may be saying it doesn't actually save you time because you have to go back and do this part 3 times, which is true. But what I'm going to show next is this is what you really want to do if there's any chance that you're going to use this thing again for similar animations for a different tag. So what do I mean by that? Just give me a second to finish tying all 3 of these to the tag indirect property. And let's hit OK and apply. Now, that took just as long as manually tying it in all 3 places. But let's say I have a second one of the same object, and I want to make sure that all of the animations that it was doing for this first integer, it does again for what I'll call color integer, color int 2. I'm going to call it slow because I'm going to have it change slower than the first one. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say everywhere that I was using color int for that first one, I want to use color int slow for that second one. And initially, because we don't have the value changing, it's just looking at 29. But if I go into gateway events and I make another script, color int slow, color int slow, and this one runs once per second rather than every 100 milliseconds. Okay, apply. Okay, and then we go back to our home screen. You can see I have this on the right changing much slower than the first one, but the font size is updating, the color is updating, and the text is updating just by changing that custom tag property. So that's a cool little thing to make it replicatable. Even with buttons and things like this, if you're going to generate a lot of toggle buttons, you want to write that script to look at custom tag parameters so that all you have to do is pass in what tag you're looking at, and all of the rest of it is extrapolated away by using those shared parameters. So that's kind of one step past an animation tutorial, but I think we have the time to make this useful. So let's go ahead and do one additional thing, which is going to be transforming text based on an integer. And I think this is super useful because it's kind of the basis of like enumeration, which is why I'm going to call it an enum tag. And it's going to be an integer, and I'm going to initially set it to 0. And the thing about enumeration is it's embedding detailed text status or some meaningful thing in an integer value, because PLCs don't always want to store long strings of text when they could just store it as an integer. So the most common thing I'm thinking of is for a sequence or a vessel like a tank in a tank farm, is tank status would just tell you 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But to make that useful to an operator, you would want to transform that to say running, idle, starting, stopped, whatever status the tank is in. So let's go ahead and go to perspective components, and let's grab a new label, and I'll show you in a little more detail what I'm talking about. I accidentally made a second label. That's okay. I'm going to grab this enum tag, and I'm going to have the tag tied to the enumeration tag. And now I'm going to add another transform just like before. And we're going to take input values and output values. You don't have to change this to string or anything like that. It'll know you want a string by default. So I'm going to say, let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are our statuses that we could get. And let's say 0 means idle for a tank. 1 means it's starting. 2 means it's running. 3 means it's paused. And 4 means it is aborting or stopping. Let's just say stopping. Aborting always means like something's wrong. Okay. Fallback will be error bad status. Okay. That's what it'll say. Now, because the value is initially set to 0, oh, let me make it a bigger font size too. Font size 40, heck yeah. Because it's initially 0, it says idle. Let's go ahead and make a new button, and let's change the script on this one to, I'm eating my earlier words, I should have just made it look at a tag. Let's look at the enumeration tag in this script. And let's say the tag path is equal to this. And then let's read the tag here in the beginning. And then, caps lock, it is case sensitive. And then we'll say if value is less than 4, let's just go ahead and add 1 to the tag, which will be value plus 1. And then we'll say else, let's write to the tag and have it be equal to 0. Okay, so this is just giving me a button that is going to let me increment the status. So there you go. It goes to 1, it says starting. 2, it says running. 3, it says paused. 4, it says stopping. And then 0, it says idle. And if I were to go in and manually make it a 5, you can see it says error bad status. If you don't like it on multiple lines like that, just make your object a little wider. All right, and then what's cool is you can also transform these values, and then you can add another transform if you want. And so you can give a little clarity around what this is. Like if this is tank status, you can say tank status, and then the value, all in one tag in one object. And you can say, okay, the tank status is idle. Now, if you have a bunch of text strings on a screen, you're able to show a lot of information just by adding a label to this. And you could also go in that same expression, and if it was, you know, a pressure reading, let's say, you could then add units to the end. So if it wasn't tank status, if it was tank pressure, you could all in one expression, you could say tank pressure, then the value, and then the units all in one string, and you would get this object that is just one cohesive object. You don't have to deal with formatting like 3 different strings all in one. And I actually think that that's pretty darn cool and pretty darn easy. So obviously the tank status being PSI doesn't make much sense, so I'll delete that PSI part because that's my OCD acting up. Apply, okay. All right, but right there we have covered so many of the basic animations that you can use in Ignition in a fairly short period of time. If you have specifics about how to do more advanced animations, or if I missed an obvious one, and you guys let me know about in the comments below, I will make sure to do a follow-up video to address the most sought after tutorials in Ignition that people have. So be sure to let me know in the comments below what you want to see more of. Thank you so much for checking out the channel. I appreciate your time. I hope this video was useful for you. Please consider leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel. It helps me out a ton. And if you want to become a super supporter of the channel, consider checking out my Patreon link at the description of this video as well. It helps me out so much, and I could not have gotten the channel to where it was without my Patreon supporters. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.